Welcome to the first video for Wetland Learning. The first project that I'm going to be working on is setting up a terrarium, hopefully to become a vivarium, which will be home to some small dart frogs. So because it's hopefully going to be home to some small animals, it's important that their needs are thought of when setting up the terrarium. So today what we're going to do is go through the plants that I've chosen for the terrarium and why I chose them, and also we're going to go through how to propagate these plants so that we can save some money on this terrarium, because it's quite an expensive thing to get off the ground, getting dart frogs and getting them all set up. First off, about the dart frogs. They are native to Central and South America, so they like rainforests, and they are dart frogs, not tree frogs, so they also like to live down in the undergrowth. They don't live up in the tops of trees. So all of those we bear in mind when choosing the plants. So first off, we've got this one here. So this is a Phytonia. This is Phytonia verschaffelti, which is also known as the nerve plant. And this is a plant that is native to Central and South America. So that's perfect geographically. Also, they're a rainforest understory plant. So the dart frogs will be well familiar with these, and they like to grow in humid conditions, and they can deal with quite a bit of shade. So there's that one. Other rainforest understory plants that I've got today are this one here. This is a Tradescantia zebrina purpussii, also known as spiderwort or inch plant or wandering Jew. This is another rainforest understory plant native to Central and South America, and it gets its name, inch plant and wandering Jew, because of how quickly it can grow. Supposedly it can grow up to an inch a week. Next one I've got here is this one here, the Calathea rufibarbara, and this is another rainforest understory plant native to Central and South America. So there's those. The last South American plant that I've got is very important for dart frogs. This one here is a bromeliad, and this bromeliad is Vriasia splendens, or the flaming sword bromeliad. And this one is actually an epiphyte that grows on tree branches, so it doesn't need lots of soil. Does like to have lots of humidity though, because it's not got soil to provide it the water. It has to get that water from the air, and also from the little cups in its leaves. This one though, because it grows higher up in the trees, will like brighter sunlight. So in a few weeks time, when it comes to putting this into a terrarium, this is going to go higher up at the top where it can get more sunlight and also provide shade to the plants further down below that need it. Next plants that I have are not they're tropical plants, but they are not from Central and South America. First off, I've got this one. This is your classic spider plant. Scientific name is Chlorophytum comosum. And yeah, these guys are actually native to Central and Southern Africa. They are really widespread in their distribution. So these guys are tough as old boots. They can grow anywhere, pretty much under almost any conditions. They survive range of water, range of light conditions, range of temperatures. So they do well anywhere, and hopefully then also inside of a terrarium. Next one I've got is this lovely fern here. This fern is a hart's tongue fern, or an asplenium. Probably this one is Asplenium nidus or nidus, because it's got black veins that run down the center of the leaf. And those guys are also epiphytes, so they can grow up on trees. They can also grow in cracks in rocks. They don't need a ton of soil, but they can grow in soil as well. The last one I've got is this one here, and this is kind of a funky one to put in a terrarium. This is actually a coffee tree, and I got it as growing with probably about 15 other little coffee tree seedlings crammed together in a pot, split them all up, and this is one of them. I've had this coffee tree now for 3 years, and it has not done very much, shall we say. It has only just this handful of leaves, so basically I'm going to pop it in the terrarium, because if it doesn't like it in there and it dies, I don't really care. This one is coffee Arabica, which is the kind of coffee that the vast majority of your coffee is made out of, instant or brewed coffee. And they are a bit more sensitive. They're from sub-Saharan Africa, around Ethiopia is their sort of center of diversity. They're normally grown at high altitudes, so they get lots of, so they can get lots of sunshine, but not too much heat because they're at high altitudes. However, it can be grown at lower altitudes, and then it would be grown as an understory plant. So you would grow taller trees around it to provide shade. So my theory is it growing at the bottom of a terrarium will get some shade from these other bromeliads and might survive, might encourage it to grow more. It is a small tree, so if it starts to outgrow the terrarium, then I'll actually take it out of the terrarium and put something else in. And yeah, that will mean that I've got a healthier coffee tree, so that's great. Right, so next, on to propagating. The ones that I'm not going to propagate today are the coffee tree, because it's a coffee tree, the fern, because I'm actually going to do that inside the terrarium as it's growing, and the spider plant, because there's an easy way to propagate the spider plants that I cannot do today. The plants that I am going to propagate today are these three smaller ones here. So I'm going to be propagating the Tradescantia, the Fittonia, and the Calathea. And that's because all of these can be propagated through division. And I'll show you what to look for when we're doing that. So all the propagation we're going to do today is what's called propagation by division. And what that means is you're taking the plant and you're dividing it up into parts. So when I was at the nursery, I picked up some plants that looked really healthy. They didn't have brown dead leaves. They didn't look too dry and crispy, anything like that. Next thing I looked for was I actually peeked around the outside of the plant, down the side, to look at if it looked like the plant was made of, had a good clump. That I could divide. So this one does, so now we're going to divide it. So to do that, you take it out of the pot, and you have a look for where the little plantlets are, and you're gently just going to tease it apart. And you can see that this Fittonia, this one potted plant, is actually, I could, if I wanted to, divide it up into 6 or 7 little plantlets, but I'm probably only going to do 3 today. So look for a nice healthy clump, gently pull it away from the rest. It looks like this is actually made up of proper separate plants, so that's great. So there's one there, and it looks like these will separate as well. So I've got 4 pretty good sized little plantlets there. Next step is to just pot it up again. So I'm going to reuse the original pot. I'm going to take the biggest clump and put it in there because it's the biggest pot that I've got. And the potting soil that I'm using today is just a normal indoor plant mix, and the indoor plant mix is different from stuff that you would use outdoors because it's got a lot more fibrous plant material in it. So if you look at this potting mix here, it's got lots of big plant fibers in it, and these are wood chip fibers. The little white bits that you see are vermiculite, and that is an inert mineral. And what both of those things do is they're going to keep this potting mix nice and open, let lots of air down into the roots. And because it's fibrous, it won't break down very quickly, so it's going to stay nice and loose for quite a long period of time, which is great. So pop those in, a little bit of soil down at the bottom, take the big clump, pop it roughly in the middle of the pot, and then take more soil and gently fill in around the edges. Give it a little shake or a tap as you go to make sure the soil settles evenly around the roots. Press it in gently with your fingers. See if you need to add a bit more soil. There we go. And that is one done. Only thing left for this one is to give it a bit of water to settle the soil around the roots. And now I'll quickly do up all these other ones. Okay, next plant we're going to do is the Calathea. Same principle. I picked a nice, healthy looking plant, looked at it a bit closely, and if you look, you can kind of just see that there looks to be about 2, maybe even 3 growing points in this plant. So here's the 2, and there's just maybe a third one popping out this side here. But what I'm going to do with this one is just split it in half into the 2 different growing points. So same thing, you take it out of the pot and just have a quick check of the root system. And you can see how thick and big these main roots are. So it looks like I'll be able to just split it gently in half. And there it goes. Not too bad. And you can see each of them maintains their own little root system here. And this one has a lot fewer roots. So what I'm going to do with this one actually is take away some of these outside leaves. And what that's going to do is reduce the amount of water that this plant needs. So it's not going to be so hurt by having fewer roots to rely on. So I'll take off those 2 side ones there. And then same thing, we'll pop this back into the pot. So some soil down at the bottom, put the plant in, and then more soil around the edge. Last one we're going to do is the Tradescantia, and this plant is slightly different from the other 2 because this one is more of a creeping plant, almost like a vine. It grows similar to the way English ivy does. So this will tend to spread out flat along the ground, and wherever the stem touches a surface, it will tend to send out roots in that way. So this plant it's got a very flat growth habit, so it's going to be a bit difficult to see where different growing points are, but it's a really vigorous grower. So even if you don't take a bit that has its own roots, it should very quickly send out its own. But if I look, I can see coming from the stem just here is indeed one of these little roots. And you can see also from these thicker fibrous roots, it's got these very thin, looks almost like spider webbing. Those are the actual feeding roots that will take in water and nutrients from the soil. And this root here does indeed have some of those little feeding roots. So I think what I'm going to do is break off this portion and hopefully get some root with it. And see. Oh, no, it looks like it's just going to split in half. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then same procedure as before, a bit of soil on the bottom and then fill in around the. Okay, so that is all of our plants propagated today. So you can see from the one plant that I had here, I've got 4 little ones. This one's become 2, and my Calathea has also become 2 plants. So we're saving money already. Next step is to water them all in, and what that's going to do is settle the soil around the roots, make sure any large air gaps are filled. But then after that, we've got to put them into and place to acclimatize to the conditions that will be inside of a terrarium. So for that, I've got this big box because I don't actually have a terrarium yet. The reason we're putting it in the big box here is because most of our houses are quite dry. And if you take a plant and take it from somewhere quite dry to somewhere quite moist and humid very quickly, what can happen is that plant can start to rot because it's not used to having the high humidity. So on these guys, for instance, if I feel the leaves, they're quite hard and crispy, and that is an adaptation for being in a dry environment. That hard layer on the outside of the leaves helps to keep them from losing too much moisture. Plants that, once it's adapted a bit to a more humid environment, the leaves are probably going to be quite a bit softer. So we're going to water them in and then put them into the box here. And for the first few days, I'm just going to leave the box uncovered so that the humidity is slightly higher, but not much higher than the room temperature that they've been growing in the last couple days. And then after that few days, what I'll do is I'll put the lid onto the box, and but not completely. I'll put it sort of off askew a little bit, and that will allow the humidity to climb a little bit higher again, just so that we're gradually acclimatizing them to the high humidity environment. And that should prevent any leaves from rotting or plants from melting, that kind of thing. Okay, so all the new divisions are now wetted and in the box. The soil hasn't sunk down too much in any of them, so I don't need to top them up with more soil. The coffee tree, as you saw, didn't fit in the box. It's a bit too tall, and that's okay because it's kind of an experiment putting it in there anyways, so if it decides it doesn't like the high humidity, it can just die, I don't mind. Other one I'm not going to put in is actually the spider plant, and I think what I'd like to do is I'm just going to grow it as a normal house plant, and when it starts to send out its little babies on those runners, I'll put those into the terrarium. But last thing is to just give the plants in the box a bit of a spray, and that again is to start increasing the humidity that's around them, so that once they go into the terrarium, they're used to that level of humidity. The water that I'm using today is rainwater, and I try to use rainwater for all the house plants because with tap water, especially in our area, it's quite hard tap water, and that means it's got quite a lot of dissolved mineral content. And if I were to keep using that tap water, that mineral content would build and build inside the soil, and it would actually start to harm the plants. And that's particularly important for houseplants because you are in control of all the water that they're getting. Outside in the garden, it's okay to use tap water on virtually all of the plants, and that's because any of those minerals that are the dissolved calcium and other minerals that are in your tap water will get washed out by rainwater. They'll flush it out of the soil down, further down in the soil, so it's not going to harm your plants there. But inside the house, if you keep adding that water, that mineral is going to keep building up. It's kind of like the scale that builds up inside your kettle. If you get lots of scale build up inside your kettle, then you live in a hard water area, and you shouldn't use your tap water for watering your plants if you can avoid it. Yeah, so that is the end of this video. Next one up will probably be if and when I get this big terrarium, and I'll go through setting up that terrarium. Thanks for watching. Ta-da!